Hey, second grade, it's Miss Stone. I am recording our first home learning video. Today we are going to go over a math lesson, and we're going to go over even and odd numbers, which is a concept that we learned way at the beginning of the year. So now we're going to take the skills that we've been working on building this whole year and work to expand that concept and make sure that we've mastered it. So our objective today is that we can classify 3-digit numbers as even or odd. If we think back to the beginning of the school year, we learned how to classify numbers up to 20 that were odd or even. So now we're going to take our knowledge of place value and what we've learned so far this year and learn how to classify 3-digit numbers to see which are odd and which are even. Let's get into our math vocabulary for the day. What do even and odd mean? If a number is even, that means we can put that number into equal groups or pairs. Pairs mean when you put things in twos. So if you have a pair of socks, you have 2 socks. If you have a pair of shoes, you have 2 shoes. If a number is odd, that means it cannot be put into pairs or equal groups. So if you have an odd number, you are always going to have 1 left over when you put something in pairs, because that means you have 2 and then 1 left over. A strategy that I like to use when I'm remembering if a number is going to be even or odd is to remember even Steven and odd Todd. Here we see even Steven. We see 5 numbers in the squares. We see 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8. Now we see odd Todd. The 5 digits that are in the squares are 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Here's a great way for us to practice and remember what makes a number even or odd. We think back to our vocabulary and we think back to how even and odd were defined, and we talked about pairs and equal groups. This shows us exactly what pairs and equal groups are. For the digit 2, we see 2 dots next to it and a line connecting them. You can draw the line connecting them and there is not another number that is left out. I want you to look at 4, 6, and 8. Notice how that is the same for those digits as well. For 4, we have 2 equal groups. For 6, we have 3 equal groups of 2. And for 8, we have 4 equal groups of 2. And there is not a dot that is left afterwards, which means that the numbers are in equal groups or pairs, with nothing left over, and they are even numbers. So 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8 are even numbers. When we look at the odd side, so digits 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, we notice that when we look at 1, there's just 1 dot next to the 1. When we look at 3, there are 3 dots next to the 1, and when we put them into equal groups or pairs, there's 1 left over, which classifies it or means that it is an odd number. We see the same for 5, 7, and 9. Notice how for 5 you have 2 equal groups, which is 4, and 1 left over, which means that in total there are 5 dots and 1 dot that you cannot put into an equal group or a pair. For 7, it's the same thing. You have 3 equal groups or pairs and 1 left over. And for 9, it is also the same thing. You have 4 equal groups or pairs and 1 left over. The 1 left over for all of these is a signal to us that this is therefore an odd number. Okay, so for this next part, I want you to grab a piece of paper and a pencil and come back and get ready to practice what we've learned so far before we get into 3-digit numbers and bump the rigor up a little bit more. So the first way that we're going to practice is I'm going to tell you a single-digit number. I want you to write that number down, and then I want you to put the number of dots that make that number up next to it and try to put it into equal groups. So if our number is 3, you're going to draw 3 dots next to the 3 and try to put them into equal groups. And now we know if we cannot put them into equal groups, we know that that number is odd. So when I start to play the music, you are going to begin. When I stop playing the music, you're going to put your pencil down and you're going to get ready to move on to the next one. Okay, our first number that we're going to practice is 8. So remember, don't start until I start the music, and as soon as I stop the music, you're going to put your pencil down and we're going to get ready to go to the next one. So ready, set. Okay, so by now you should have written 8 down and put them into equal groups. If you could put them into equal groups and there is not any left over, did you figure out that 8 was an even or an odd number? Great, so now we're ready to move on. So the next number that we're going to focus on working on, we are going to work on 5. Okay, so at this point you should have written 5 down and you should have put 5 into equal groups. So if you are able to put 5 into equal groups and there is not anything left over, to have an odd or an even number. Great. We now know that since we were able to put 2 equal groups and 1 left over for 5, that 5 is therefore an odd number. So now we're going to bump the rigor a little bit and we're going to go into double-digit numbers. And we're going to see how when we look at double-digit numbers, we can figure out a trick to help us figure out if they're odd or even very quickly. So now we're going to tap into our prior knowledge of place value and remembering tens and ones. So when we look at the number 26, we notice that when we use base 10 blocks, we have 2 sticks, which we know is 10, 20, and 6 ones blocks, which means that when we count them all together, it's 10, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. So our knowledge of place value is going to be really important when we look at double-digit numbers and see if we're going to figure out if they're odd or even. So on here we see that 26, 2 is in the tens place and 6 is in the ones place. Every time we are going to figure out if a number is odd or even, the place value that we need to look at in order to see if it is odd or even is the ones place. So again, in order to see if a number is odd or even, we always look right away to the ones place. So here we see that in the ones place, it is the digit 6. And the skill that we just learned, when we put 6 and we draw our dots out, so 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot, 4 dot, 5 dot, 6 dot, I can make 3 equal groups or pairs with that, which means I don't have any dots left over, which means that 6 is an even number, and therefore 26 is an even number. Notice how I didn't even look at the tens place at all. So the 2 representing 20 doesn't impact whether 26 is an odd or an even number. The only thing I have to do is look at the ones place, where 6 is, put my dots, see if I can put them into equal groups or pairs, and if I can put them all into equal groups or pairs, I know that that number is then an even or an odd number. Since 6 is in the ones place and we can put 3 equal groups or 3 pairs for 6 and nothing is left over, 26 is therefore an even number. So we're going to use that same strategy and we are going to use it for a 3-digit number. So we see here that our 3-digit number is 129. We see that the big square represents 100. We see that the 2 10 sticks represent 20. And we see that the 9 ones cubes represent 9. So remember when we were looking at 26 in the last 2-digit number, we remembered that the only number that we had to look at was, the only digit we had to look at was in the ones place. So I want you to look at 129 and see if you can tell me what digit is in the ones place for 129. Great. The answer is 9. 9 is the digit in the ones place. And we see in the picture they already separated the ones cubes into pairs or equal groups, and we see that we have 4 equal groups of 2 and we have 1 left over. So when we count them all together, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, representing 9 ones. And we see that we are able to make 4 equal groups, but we still had 1 left over. Therefore, is 129 even or odd? Awesome. 129 is an odd number because we look at the ones place, we see that the digit is 9, we make our cubes into equal groups or pairs, and we see that we still have 1 left over. So therefore, 129 is an odd number. All right, you've done an awesome job so far. So now it is your turn. Look at the worksheet following this, and you're going to practice on your blank piece of paper that you have whether you are able to tell if a number is odd or even. The easiest way for you to do this is to pause on the screen. You guys did an awesome job today. I am so excited and happy that we got to do this lesson together, and I cannot wait until our next one.